Okay, all the rockets are tucked away in a corner of the classroom at school, which we can't get back to. So, let's do some rocketry online. This is Kerbal Space Program. If you have a just half-working computer with like a Core Duo processor, you can get this to run. If you've got a better rig sitting around, then it'll run a little bit better. But it's a computer game. You can buy it on the Steam store or anywhere else. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of play around with this. I'm going to show you some stuff as to what's going on. And we're just going to kind of see where it goes. I think the first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to go into a sandbox so we can get everything available to us. We're just going to call it sandbox. And what we're going to look at in this video is specifically how launching a rocket needs to be done in a very specific way. Else, just sending your rocket, if here's the Earth, if you just send it straight out of the Earth, your rocket is going to come just straight down. To actually orbit something, you need to be moving tangentially to that surface, or kind of perpendicular to it, in order to fall around the Earth. And that's what we're going to do right here. So we're going to go into our little launch hangar in the center of the Kerbalville. This guy's saying something to us, who cares? And here, because we're in Sandbox, we've got all sorts of things that we could build and whatnot. We can put things together. Because we're just looking at orbital velocities, let's just pick something and just kind of deal with it. Let's see, what do we want to pick? There's all sorts of cool stuff here. Let's pick... What's this? Orbiter 1. What is Orbiter 1? Whoa, that looks messed up. I don't want that. What is wrong with Orbiter 1? Let's do this. Let's do Kerbal 1. That looks fun. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure I've got a little bit more fuel than I need. I'm always panicky about fuel in this game. I'm not a very good pilot, and if you're not a very good pilot, then you can pretty easily mess some things up. At the same time, by putting a little bit more fuel in, I make it somewhat likely that I will tip this over, because we've got a center of mass here and a center of thrust and an aerodynamic overlay, or center of aerodynamic forces. So that's not bad. So hopefully this should work. So let's take it out to the launch pad. And luckily, because I'm in sandbox mode, all my little Kerbals, these little green guys that are going to appear, you can't really see them because of where they are, but there's my little Kerbal knot. And he's a 5-star pilot, which makes this a little bit easier for me. But what I'm going to do out on the launch pad, and we can see there's my center, I'm going to turn stability assist on because my Kerbals are decent pilots. If you're playing a campaign mode, your Kerbals are not good pilots, and they're liable to tip your ship over. And I'm going to turn this into Manoeuvre Mode, and now we can see the apoapsis and periapsis of my rocket. We see kind of an altitude and the farthest away point and the closest point. What we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to get this orbit so that both of these are somewhere above 70,000 meters, or 70 kilometers. So what I'll do is I will turn up my throttle on anything that is throttleable for my engines. I'm going to look down here for the staging, so certain things will go off at the same time. So this first engine and these two side engines will go off, and then the side engines will fall away, and then later on, second, all of this will fall off from a decoupler, another engine will launch, and then we'll see if we can bring them back home. Okay? So here we go. 3, 2, 1. So there's my launch. Now I'm waiting for this to get to about 50 meters per second before I start tipping over. And the reason why I would want to tip over is what we're going to show next. But let's just for right now just launch this straight up, right? It's your first launch ever. You just want to launch straight up into the sky. You just want to get to space. So we're burning. We're burning. We're pretty stable because we got these fins in the back. We can see my solid fuel boosters on the side are being burned down quickly, and my liquid fuel's taking a little longer. If we go to the map, we can see how this is going for me. So it looks like I'm going straight up, but I actually have some sort of drift here, and that's because our planet was rotating, so it actually gave us some velocity to the side. So we're just kind of going up in this arc. if we look down here at the nav ball, we can see I'm still pointed directly up. I'm only drifting because the planet was originally rotating as well. These have finished burning, so I'll get rid of them. I just dropped some weight, so conservation momentum means my rocket will speed up a little bit. And I'm still burning the liquid fuel. We see we're going up. We're going through the atmosphere, and it's starting to thin down here. And we can see, because of that sideways motion, I'm kind of just going to drift off into the ocean because I kind of got thrown up and the Earth is moving, and I was moving. And I'm going up, and I've got 25,000. I'm almost out of this liquid fuel. And we're just rolling and rolling and rolling. A little Jebediah down here in the corner. He's just relaxing. Here, let's get a little Jeb down there. How you doing, Jeb? Doing good. We're still just going up. My liquid fuel's about to burn out. I'm at 40,000. It's empty, so I will let it go, and I'll burn the next one. We notice there's, we're kind of floating up here a little bit. So here's my next one. I'm going out. Notice that I'm not really circling the Earth yet. I'm just going out. And the only reason I'm even drifting sideways at all is because I had some initial velocity because this Earth, or this planet Kerbal as they call it in the game, was spinning. And I picked up that rotational velocity as well. But this is I'm never gonna, make it anywhere with this. I'm just gonna kind of go up. I'm gonna hit the apoapsis here, the farthest away point, in about 2 minutes, and I'm gonna fall back down. Even if I'm burning all of this fuel, this isn't really helping me at all. It's gonna take me another 2 minutes just to get there. And I'm still burning fuel, so that's gonna go out even further and further and further. Notice though that because we're out so far, we're at 90,000 meters, 90 kilometers. We are effectively in space. We're outside the atmosphere at this point. The atmosphere is very little. There is still gravity here because, we're going up. We're going to hit this high point, and then we are going to fall back down. And we're going to, fall back down hard and crash into the ocean. So just because it, it looks like we're in space, like there's still a lot of gravity out here. Just how things are going to look, and we'll see that in the orbit. So in 3.5, 4 minutes almost, we're going to be out here. This apoapsis point is getting super far away, but we're definitely not making it around the Earth, right? Like, we're just going to go up and we're just going to fall back down. Even though I'm burning all of this fuel, I'm going to be 300 kilometers away eventually. It's just not going to help us. Here, let's do this. Let's cut our engines, and let's just speed up time. So I'm speeding up time here so we can see me still going up. I'm hitting this apoapsis point. And now we're just falling over. We're falling back into the world. We saw the Earth spin underneath us. And as we come back down and we're about to enter the atmosphere, all sorts of things are going to happen here. We'll come back to that. So if I just launch straight up, I'm just going to fall straight back down. And we're going to burn up in the atmosphere in a second. So let's revert the flight. Let's go back to launch and see how we can take the same rocket but actually put it into an orbit around the planet so it stays up there in space. So I'm going to put the stability assist back on. I'm back here on the planet. Everything's staged again, same rocket. But this time what we're going to do is as we go up, I'm going to tip my rocket over. And I'm going to go into what's known as a gravity-assisted launch. So remember how the planet was rotating and it gave us some of that sideways velocity to kind of get that little bit of an arc? We're going to use that velocity and we're going to add to it sideways. So we're going to start moving fast enough sideways that we constantly miss the surface of the planet as we're falling. And the best way to do this for stability is to wait until you have about 50 meters per second for this specific ship, and then start tipping over. I can show you in a kind of dummy thing right here what happens if you just try tipping your ship over early. You don't have enough pressure, enough forces pushing back on your fins to maintain stability, and your ship just kind of falls. So here, like, watch this. And you can see this isn't going to be good for little Jeb. So, boom! Yeah, so there's that, right? So you need to get a little bit of velocity, a little bit of speed before you start tipping over so you can be stable. So if we do this time, when we go up, we turn our thrusters on and then burn it. Now if we wait till about 50 to turn it over 10 degrees, we'll be more stable. You're going to hear a lot of my keyboard here as I feather this. There it is. So we begin to feather this. We see this green dot here, that's our velocity vector, and we can see as we're doing this, we're turning over. Now by 150, I want to get this down to about 70 for the actual gravity turn, and we're in a good spot right now. So now I'll just keep clicking the button to kind of turn over. I've got enough force acting on this. I can look at my maneuver modes. My apoapsis is increasing. And by the time we get to about 25,000 meters here, I want to be down 60 degrees from upward, down to about this 30 degrees on the horizon. And that'll put me into a nice gravity assist. So my boosters are gone, so I drop them. Lose that weight, speed up a little bit. I'm much more aerodynamic now. I want to keep turning over. My apoapsis is increasing. We're actually going to do something clever whenever we get this up to about 60 in order to really open up our orbit. So I'm still just feathering it over. We're at about 18,000. Maybe I've got this here a little bit early, but we should be fine. I'm going to try to back it out a little bit to get us a little bit more height. Because we're down a little bit much. Come on, Jeb, I need something from you. We want to be up just a little bit higher, but we should be fine here. If we're not, I'm going to have to clip this video. Okay, so now we're going really fast. We're also in the atmosphere. I'll burn that. Fire number 2. This is a different engine here. This is a engine that works better in the upper atmosphere. And I want to get this to around 60 some. And I should be pretty good to kind of begin turning this down. We'll notice this apoapsis is going to get to that 60 pretty fast. And I've still got a lot of fuel here. Now if we look at the map on this one, notice how much wider this arc is because I'm turning over. Okay? And we want this wide arc so that we can start orbiting the planet. So let's wait till this apoapsis gets to about 65. There we go, 65, 66. And now this is going to be a little weird. We just completely cut engines. And the reason why we did that is because when we get to the apoapsis, what we're going to do is we are going to burn here. And when we burn here, when we send off the engines... Whoops, I'm messing all this up. When we burn here with our engines, we'll be able to generate a complete orbit around the planet. Now I really turned down on this in order to try to get this burn happening. Let's try to cut this here. So I burned a little bit more sideways, and now when I just kind of float and I hit this apoapsis, I'll be able to only burn for another 15 seconds, and by doing that, I'll put myself in this very circular orbit. So we kind of go up, we turn over, we get very sideways, and if we look, like I'm very sideways with respect to the Earth here. But whenever we get to that point, we just kind of coast for a bit, hit the apoapsis, and when we burn here, we actually expand the other side of our elliptical path. And if we imagine this is like an ellipse, it's just stuck in the Earth. When we hit this point, we start burning, we're going to get this much larger flip here, and that's what we want to get that circular orbit. So what we can do is let's just warp our time until we get here. And when we do this, we only need to burn for 15 seconds. So when we get to this node, we're going to burn 7.5 seconds before the node and 7.5 seconds after it. That way our burn is averaged across both of them. So let's get to the node. We're going to set this to our maneuver, which is what we're doing here. That's our blue dot. So we're at our blue dot. We could do this ourselves, or we can... Jeb's a good pilot. He could do it himself. And now it's 1 minute until we burn. So we'll speed up time a little bit. Tick, 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 tick. Tick, 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 tick. And then at 7 seconds, we're going to burn this in this position, and we're going to watch this orbit actually open up. Okay, so we got about 7 seconds. 3, 2, 1, burn. So I turned our thrusters on, we're burning. If we take a look at this blue path here, this blue path is starting to open up. And we want to burn at the apoapsis in order to open up the periapsis over here so that it opens out. And in 2, 1, that's our burn. Okay, so we got a nice burn here, and now we're in orbit. And now that we're in orbit, like, we are technically still being pulled down by the planet. It's just we're moving so fast sideways that every time the planet is pulling us down, we're just missing it. Like, we're just coming this way, and it's like, oh, we're being pulled down, and we miss. And then, oh, I'm being pulled down and miss. Oh, I'm being pulled down. And we just keep missing over and over and over again. So this is actually what an orbit is. There's still a ton of gravity out here. If I were to turn around the opposite direction and fire my rockets, I would be slowing down in my orbit, and the planet would just pull me back down, just like it did before. Notice I'm I'm much closer than I was last time we ran this launch. You know, I'm only at 100,000 meters, 100 kilometers in this kind of orbital path. But because I'm going more sideways with my velocity, I'm going to stay around this planet. And if I speed up time here, you know, we can see I'll just stay around this planet like this pretty much forever. There's no atmosphere really up here. If we take a look at this, the atmosphere is next to nothing. So you'll just keep going and going and going. Okay? Which begs the question, if, you know, this little Kerb and Jeb is going to stay up here forever, how do we get them back home? Well, like I said previously, if we were to lose this orbital velocity, if we were to lose this speed going, you know, to the right here around the planet, if we somehow burned it in the opposite direction, we would slow down, we'd collapse our orbit, and we'd fall back in. And we actually don't need to do this a whole bunch. We only need to do this until we hit about 50,000 meters, because then there's enough atmosphere here that the atmosphere will actually begin to slow us down as well. So let's do that. Instead of going in the direction of our velocity, so notice how our ship is going to the right and we're pointed to the right. That's called prograde. We're going to burn in what's known as retrograde. So you might have heard like retro rockets or something like that. It just means the opposite direction. So here's our retrograde. We're moving to the right, but our thrust is going to push us to the left. And when we burn here with our liquid fuel, we're going to notice that this orbital velocity starts to go down. So here I'm just burning kind of light. Notice how this is decreasing. When that orbital velocity decreases, as it's doing now, notice how, if I'm at apoapsis here, this is starting to collapse that orbit, okay? And if I look at this, I'm now at negative 20,000 kilometers on closest approach. In theory, I'm going to hit back here somewhere, okay? All this means is that as I start falling in, I'm going to hit the atmosphere at some point, and when I hit that atmosphere, it's going to further slow me down. So I'm not actually going to land out here. The atmosphere is going to slow me down even further, and it's going to pull me back on the planet somewhere around here. But we also have to remember that the planet's rotating, so, you know, this planet's rotating like this, which means I'm going to be pulled back here, and then I'm going to get a little bit more distance off that due to the rotation of the planet for whenever we go and try to touch down. So if we just kind of speed this up, watch our inevitable fall. When we get close enough to the atmosphere, it'll slow us back down. So we just slowed down next to the atmosphere. And because this atmosphere is going to heat us up a lot, I'm actually going to decouple all of my thrusters right here so that they kind of fall away. And I'm going to do this in a prograde direction so they fall out behind me. Actually, it might be better to point them in towards the Earth like this so that they don't accidentally bump us. So go away, stuff. And then now if I point retrograde, what will happen is as we begin to hit this atmosphere, you're going to start to see that our capsule here where Jeb is located is going to start heating up, but this is designed to take the heat. All of this stuff is not. It's going to burn up whenever it gets into orbit, and we'll hear a little bit of an explosion there. So let's speed up time. We see that we're falling inward due to our orbital pathing. We're on the dark side of the moon here, or rather the dark side of the Earth. It's nighttime on this side. There's our capsule. There's that. There's the Kerbal 1 degree. And now we're starting to heat up. Now luckily for us, the way these capsules are set up is that we're going to heat up the bottom, and they're most stable this way. Jeb's somewhere up in there. And because of this atmospheric braking, notice we don't have any engines here, but we're still slowing down. Okay, that's the atmosphere. It's very thin right now, but we're moving very fast through it. So there's a lot of frictional forces. And because of that atmosphere, this is actually starting to drift back on us as we slow down further and further. We see at the bottom, this is our heat. So if this gets all the way up and fills the bar, we're going to explode. That's not a good thing. Luckily for us, this is designed to withstand a lot of the heat that we're going to get, so that should not fill up for this. We're not going fast enough. But our altitude keeps dropping down, our velocity keeps lowering as we move through this atmosphere. And this is a nice, gentle atmospheric re-entry. It's kind of very gradual. This could actually be a lot worse if we drop straight through the atmosphere, because we'll get into a thicker atmosphere too fast, and it'll give us a ton of heat. This is a nice atmospheric braking re-entry. So we're still braking on the way in, still generating a ton of heat. This heat is super dangerous. We actually lost a shuttle crew once. A heat ceramic tile failed on a shuttle, and they burned up on re-entry. That was an extremely sad day. But notice we just hit this kind of atmosphere, and we're starting to slow down a lot due to it. And because of that, we've slowed down enough that we're not actually generating enough atmospheric friction to heat this up anymore to crazy levels. And now it's just a matter of falling down. We've got a parachute at the top of our capsule, so that whenever Jeb gets closer to the ground, we can launch that and then bring him back nice and safe. We're still slowing down because we're moving through the air. And right around now, we're going to hit some sort of terminal velocity, around 260 some. I'm just going to watch this to make sure I prime this parachute at the right spot. And boom. And look at that, with 200 meters to spare, Jeb's coming back home nice and safe. Okay, so that's what an orbital velocity is. You cannot just launch up. You need to launch sideways in order to get something into orbit on one of these gravity-assisted launches. And if you do that properly, you're going to be going around the planet instead of just away from it, or you'll just fall back down. There's gravity everywhere. You can't get rid of it. But how you make use of it is how you get a nice successful launch and how you get your little Kerbins to have some fun. Okay, so thanks for watching this video. I think in the next one, we're going to try to get to the Mun, or the moon in this game, by doing a translunar injection and to see what that kind of looks like. We'll be using a much, much bigger rocket for that to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. So with that, hope you enjoyed the video. Take it easy.